This is an experiment. Can creativity offer a creative alternate model of reality that provides solutions to mysteries of humanity's interest, confirmed in observation, all the while remaining a potential? And if it doesn't, it gets deleted and another creative alternative comes up. And so let's get started. So in order to start solving mysteries, we have to recognize where we come from, because the world today is absolutely unrecognizable in comparison to where we start. Best strategy is to solve the earliest ones first. We have to imagine ourselves in their place. You in a completely untouched, fresh land. What was our first motivation? The first thing on our minds? Our prime directive, or what was our priority? Our main focus or concern? A fresh, new, untouched earth. There was no locations at all. So I thought about this a lot, and I was like, since the world is decked out with locations today, kind of gives me the notion that there must have been a time where how to get a location would have been a very desired bit of information. This would have been really important information to know. I'm not talking about a temporary location, that's easy to get, but a permanent location. How to make a permanent location, or get a permanent location, or find a permanent location. This would be very desired info, especially if you could make one. Then you could pick any location and make a permanent location from that area. That's ideal. So that means there was a time in human history where what was at the forefront of human thought and interest and efforts was to figure out how to make a permanent location. Well, this is relatively easy. If you're going to make yourself a place to live, you're going to have the fundamental needs for survival, which is oxygen, but that goes without saying, water, food, and shelter for security, safe sleep. That's it. That's only those three. Then it dawned on me. You must have those three fundamental needs met from that location, or it won't be permanent. You'll have to take a hike and go and find another place. The point is that I'm trying to get at is there is only one way to make a permanent location to survive at, and that way is that location must have a source that offers these three fundamental needs from that location, or you would never decide to make a home there. No one would. You just would not make a location there. You got to take your life in your own hand. You can't depend, what if there's a drought? Then, you can't depend on rainwater. I'm sure they used as much rainwater as they could, but it was not dependable enough to just start building anywhere you want, and hopefully the rainwater will supply your kingdom or location. But we did find a way to choose any location you want and make a location to survive at from there. We were able to create our own source of these reoccurring needs, and what it was the well. And it's the most profound historical discovery in human history. It really developed our understanding as we know it today, and it was at the forefront of human concentration and interest for 1,000 years or more. This will be easy to notice as we move further on. Well, the well offered all three solutions. Not only would it provide you with water for agriculture and farming, but the digging for the well would provide you with material for your shelter. And so two birds with one stone, you would so the masonry was free from digging in the well. one last little issue needed to be resolved, and that's that most wells typically are seawater wells or saltwater wells. It's very not, I mean, freshwater is not common. To find a freshwater well or whatever deposit was just not common. So typically it was a seawater well, and that's fine. We just had the hurdle of having to figure out how to desalinate the seawater. But at least we had a well with seawater and shelter at our location. Like that was, and to tell you honestly, you didn't want freshwater well. Seawater well was better because seawater has every mineral and element in it that freshwater doesn't have. Like every mineral and element that nature has to offer is in seawater. That's comes to be a big factor later on in this. So let's just keep in mind, seawater is way more beneficiary than freshwater in that aspect. But we need to find a way to desalinate. Now, there's many different ways to desalinate, and I think that many of them used, gravel, like basically as you force salt water through soil and rock and sand, it leaves a salt behind, and eventually you do it enough, and it kind of filters the salt out. And at the end, after a few, different gauges of gravel, you get pretty fresh water. It was popular style, but there was another one, which was the earliest one, which was distillation, where you just evaporate, you boil water in the steam of seawater, and so, distillation was probably the most desired, especially if you used solar. Because solar would have been the ultimate in a way. I mean, solar distillation happens naturally in nature. It just, evaporates, and then the clouds, and then it rains down. But I mean, that's too slow of a process. But still, it would have been the ultimate, development if you were capable of coming up with a good idea on how to solar distill salt water quickly. So I could see humanity either way. These solutions to the water well started the era of individual locations, like the first step to kingdoms. Individual locations. They had everything they needed from their area. They didn't need anybody else's stuff. They didn't have to go wandering around for food, water, and shelter. They were able to make, since when you're desalinating seawater like constantly from your well, and you're making fresh water, well, you're not going to throw the fresh water away. You're going to make a pond or a moat or a lake, or you're going to keep the fresh water. So basically, a lot of these locations were capable of making their own little freshwater pool or pond or lake, even large lakes, near their, kingdom. I'll call them kingdoms at this point, I guess. But they're individual locations, right? Like they're all like single, solitary families that, independently discovered how to get a well and get fresh water from that location, or they found a location with fresh water already there. But those are rare, as we know. I'm sure we can all agree so far. Fact. And this is why freshwater is the primary resource. You don't mine by hand. I mean, maybe a little, but they use water to mine for them. And so they can start a tunnel on the side of the well, and it'll just tunnel for them. And then when tide goes down, they can go down there and see what they found, or whatever. Point is, they don't do all that mining by hand. And the masonry is the muck, that the mud and the stuff that gets displaced while the water is digging. Okay, I hope we're still all on the same page here. I mean, this is how it was done. This is how we did it. This is kind of like why we have canals and aqueducts and cisterns discovered all over the world that are like dating back to even before 4000 BCE, all everywhere, and Romans to another level, and blah, blah, blah. Like, this was at the main forefront of interest. This was our first tech, really, was making canals and tunnels and lakes and salt lakes, and this is all we did, make locations, you know what I mean? Quick point to make here is that the well was a successful source of all fundamental needs for humanity as as existence. Like, it actually was a functioning provider of all these three fundamental needs. And we need these three things to even have a location be permanent. I mean, so this well was capable of sustaining our lives from that spot and offering even the masonry free. We would not go looking to substitute this with more work. I mean, we had enough work already. We don't need any more. It was functioning and dependable. We would have kept on this. We would have thought about this. I mean, would you make a place in a location like this, or put energy into an area like that, if you didn't have all these resources met from that location? I mean, you got to ask yourself here. Would I do this? Nobody would do that. I know I wouldn't. I mean, if I'm going to make a place that I'm going to call my home, it's got to have all those resources that are needs met. Those needs have to be met. Imagine doing all this and still having to go take a hike to go and get just fundamental resources like water and, it just doesn't make sense. You need a well, the source of which anything is drawn. And they say anything. As soon as a spring begins to be utilized as a source of water supply, is more or less thoroughly transformed into... So now, knowing what we know, there's going to be a place within the location that is a place of work. And so I started reviewing a lot of locations, and it was pretty easy to notice or assume which one must be the well. And it seemed recurring that a lot of these, places of work was a structure. They put the well, it kept it indoors, I guess. I mean, who wants to work on a well in the rain kind of thing? So, so there was a structure that everybody had to go to and do some work at. So, and it was actually pretty easy to notice which structure it must have been, looking on locations to locations to locations. I hope we can all agree that this is somewhat logical and reasonable, because this reasoning that we've reached the end of offers a greater logical, sensible understanding, a fresh perspective, and a handful of new leads we can use as new insight to reference when reviewing all these locations. The new leads are that there should be a freshwater deposit, there should be a saltwater well. That would mean if there's a well that there's canals and tunnels. If there's tunnels and canals, that means there's obelisks and fountains. And that means that there's some mining going on. That means that there's masonry free, or the means of getting free masonry. Some type of desalination, salt deposit, agriculture, some walls. But the walls now have been taken down since the world has borders. But they're still pretty close. They usually pave the roads of the old part of the city. And like that, the bricks or the blocks are usually, they don't move them too far, and it's the rubble from the old structure or something. But usually, the paved roads are the walls. And looking at their artifacts that they were capable of doing in the structure, they were capable of doing. All doing this kind of masonry kind of suggests that they had like some kind of extreme heat of some type. And a type of extreme heat that you can't even reach with fire. And looking into the history, they had structures called heliocheminists, which were solar powered rooms. And way back BCE, there was solar distillation, there was solar this, solar that. So I was thinking I would look into the possibility of them having, solved the solar convergence, converging light as a potential in tech that they might have been using way earlier than we believe that they were using. So, I mean, I was going to keep that on the back burner, because the word heliochemist means solar furnace. Because I'm investigating any possibility here, as long as it's observable, then it'll remain with the model. If it's not observable, then then it gets deleted, and a new one gets a new potential gets, or a new alternative gets used. So, investigating Borobudur. Looks like it had a freshwater lake that surrounded it at one point, and there's big talk of having subterranean canal that might be below it. Srigriya in Sri Lanka has, a water garden in the front that they can control from the top of the rock, because it's got a huge lake on the top, and basically there's supposedly like water tunnels through that rock all the way down to the front gardens. It also has a moat that goes all the way around in a freshwater lake nearby. Angkor Wat, for example, is massive. Like, this moat is 25 meters wide by 25 feet deep. Man-made moat of fresh water that surrounds the place, and there's a massive lake not too far away that obviously is man-made. You could tell by the geometry of it, and so that was observable there. The salt deposits are also observable at all of these locations. Then there's like the Nika caves, for example. It seemed that it was desired to use volcanic activity below their mining, so that they could put hypersaline there in a cave that they'd mine, and the volcanic activity would evaporate it quickly, and it would go through the soil and get fresh and create a freshwater lake at the surface at the closest basins. So they were pretty strategic, and it definitely looked like it was desired, or was something that they did reoccurring and for some sites. Nika caves have the world's biggest selenite crystal collection found by humanity to date. And it's suggested that it took millions of years to make, like that the seawater flooded the cave and then evaporated, and then flooded the cave again and evaporated, and flooded the cave again and evaporated, leaving deposit every time. A level eventually, after millions of years, would have created crystals of this size. But if it was hyper salinity liquid, like mostly salt, then it would evaporate really quickly. It would make this lake on the surface that you can see here, that kind of poured out of the mountain, and leave these huge crystals below way faster than we could think that they would be made. You know what I mean? Like, it could be a man-made thing. It's observable. I'm just, it's observable. Like the keyhole mounds of Japan, it's like the water's all the way around. This was a thing, like the island. It seemed like there was Tenochtitlan. It was like an island with water all the way around. Borobudur basically was the same thing. That it's a reoccurring thing. This design looked like, and you gotta have fresh water. You can't survive from location without fresh water. You have to have a well. I mean, that's got to be happening. One thing for sure is that humanity was very industrious. I mean, right off the get-go. Now, if I was living by myself, and I had a well, that's no problem. I got my own shelter. I got my own. I desalinate my water. But if I do my own farming. But if I had 70 people living with me, I can't desalinate all their water. And, like, if we're going to make a community, these 70 people would have to kind of, like, do their own, like, they have to do their own work, supply for themselves. I can't do it. It's not really my job to do. Like, if all these people are going to live as a community and work off a well, or maybe make a couple more or whatever, but the point being that, everybody's going to have some work to do to supply for themselves. So there's going to be some work that has to be done. It has to be constantly maintained. These are reoccurring needs, so there's going to be reoccurring work. And so, period. Everybody's got to do their own dishes, so to speak. Since all these independent locations had to do the same work, the well, they all had to do the same work, then that I thought, what other things that they have independently discovered that are similar might be directly connected to this work as well, because they've already got one thing that they have to be doing that's the same. So maybe other things that are the same are part of that work. And so that would be a clue in helping me to solve how this work was done. So there's a few things actually. There's they all had pottery, of course. They all had masks. Also, I figured something that would be very clever would be to, no matter the mystery the model takes us, claims to have a solution for, we would go and review the etymology of all the words involved in that subject and see if any of the refer to the model's suggestions, see if it's somewhat confirm or supporting the model. Because if it was going to remain a potential and it was observable in reality, then the word should also have some kind of potential as well. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to do that. An example is like the word well. Like we said, they could get all their fundamental needs met from a seawater well. Well, right here, the word well says source from which anything is drawn. So basically saying anything that humanity could possibly need, or that would need, especially in fundamentals, anything is drawn. That's what it says. So the word is, this is what I mean. Like the word does offer support. As far as the solar furnace, they had metallurgy from way back. They really had some amazing artifacts. And if they were doing these stones, that would be like volcanic heat kind of level. And so extreme heat. So I would actually kind of figured that their solar desalination was potentially capable of being a solar foundry as well for their metallurgy, and whatever, everything else that they made was with extreme heat like this, is what I figured. So it would be solar foundry or solar forge or solar desalination as well. Like it would be capable of all of these effects as well. So there'd be more than one job offered by this solar structure and the well. That's a creative potential that I'm going to put on, that's in the back burner. It's sitting there. Okay, good job, everybody. This chapter just offered you the guidelines for the foundation in the early development of the foundation of the model that we'll use throughout the entire story, and was the model that I used to solve the first mystery, to provide the first solution to the first mystery. And that started it all. And if there's people out there that like solving puzzles, I'm going to walk the whole chapter 2 is the solution, but I'll, if you want to solve it yourself using the guidelines, I can offer you a couple of clues. The guidelines are all you really need, but I got a couple of clues you can use as well to if you like to try. Maybe you can come up with the same solution I did. Otherwise, just hold on, and I'm going to walk you through together. We can walk through it together. But this is for the Pyramid of Giza, and the clue is, think of it yourself. Think of if you were going to build a pyramid and get the same results that they got, how would you do it? And secondly, why would you use 3 different types of stones for a pile of rock? Really ask yourself that. Why use 3 different types of stone for a pile of rock? It just doesn't make sense. So that's a big clue right there. And there's a couple more, but I mean, I'm sure that if you put a lot of thought into it, you might be capable of coming up with a solution yourself. Following the guidelines and this clue here is, and a lot of thinking should take you to success. Otherwise, just hold on. What I'm walking you through right now. Good luck. Lastly, at the end of each chapter, I'll just have a little bit of music, and I'll just give a bunch of extra documents that if you're really into understanding all of this and gaining the best understanding possible from it, reviewing all of these articles would be a really good idea. Not only will it help you pick up some parts in coming chapters better, but it'll really, in general, help you in picking up the entire understanding in the end. So have at it if you're into it, but it's not necessary. I mean, like, but it would definitely help you in the long run. See you in the next one. Please don't subscribe.